So Rinpoche started off by saying that he's very happy to see all of you here, all the people who have this faith and conviction, belief in the fully self-awakened Buddha, in the Dhamma and in the Sangha. And so many of you have been here before. You have this intention to practice. And there are some people who have joined us just online before via Zoom, and maybe some people who haven't joined us before for any of these retreats. But all of you have this faith. You'll have this conviction and this belief, and this is something that's very important. It's one quality or one Dhamma which works to develop our hearts, develop them so that they enter into wisdom. And for that wisdom, we need faith first. So we can see that there are huge numbers of people who don't have this faith. Or perhaps they have faith, but it's just faith with regards to making merit and generosity. There are many people like that. And there are people who have this faith and sincerity in being virtuous and keeping the precepts, but less than those with faith and generosity. But with the people who have faith and this intention to practice the Dhamma, and the practice this kammatthana, that's far less. So we should understand this word, kammatthana. And what this means is the basis of our work or of our action. So we have this faith like this faith in cultivating our minds, in providing this basis for them, this basis of our action, this faith in developing mindfulness, and growing in these qualities. So it begins with this saddha, this faith or conviction, and this grows into effort and sincerity and the maintaining of mindfulness. So like when we do the chanting, then we should use that as an activity of developing mindfulness. Whether we're standing, sitting, walking, lying down, we should try to keep our mindfulness with us. And upon entering into a meditation retreat like this, an intense retreat or quite a strict retreat, if we want results from that, then what we need to do is to speak very little. So if it's not really necessary to say something, then we shouldn't say it. And this gives us the opportunity to look at our minds. So whether we're walking about or whether we're doing any personal activities, then we try to keep our mindfulness there with us. And we can see as well the thinking and the proliferation that arises. And when there's this proliferation coming up, what that comes from is delusion. And so the mind, it has this delusion, and that delusion is conditioning the mind. And so it gives rise to this, or the mind orders the brain, and this proliferation arises. And then these thoughts appear within the mind. So this is a Dhamma aramana, one of these sense objects which appear within the mind itself. But if we speak very little, then we'll be able to see this happening. If we speak a lot, however, then all of that is just to do with self, just to do with me and mine. It's like if we read or listen to various things, news, for example, that all of that is just about self. It's all a matter of conventions. So like speaking right now, this is also a convention as well, the speech. But it's one that we use to be able to understand, for people to understand and know this path of practice, this path of sila, samadhi, and panya, of virtue, collectedness, and wisdom. It's like how we often speak about the Four Noble Truths, that of unsatisfactoriness or suffering, dukkha, its cause, its cessation, and the path leading to that cessation. So for everyone who has come here, you'll come here through a wish to be freed from suffering, or for the suffering that you experience to lessen. You've come a long way. You've passed over countries, over oceans, and you've needed to use time and resources to be able to get here. And for some people, maybe some business people, it can be very difficult for them to find the time to be able to join this retreat. And so you should really use this time well, really try to develop these meditation objects and train your minds so that you can reach inner peace, and so that this practice can develop into wisdom, this knowing things as they are in line with truth. So wisdom in terms of the studies that we've done, we've passed through that all already. And then there's the wisdom that we use in our work in order to find wealth, in order to find the four requisites. And perhaps we get a lot of those or a little, depending upon what's appropriate for our abilities. But we know that kind of wisdom already. But the wisdom that we're talking about here, this is the panya, or the wisdom that gives us an understanding of reality in line with how it actually is, a true understanding of nature. So when the perfectly self-awakened Buddha awakened to the Dhamma, what he awakened to was nature. So seeing the self, or seeing this body, or all of the things around us, whether it's animals or people or the various things surrounding us, that these all are nature, that these all count as something which is of the nature to arise and therefore of the nature to cease. So this is something that we know already, we understand already, but it's an understanding that hasn't really entered into our hearts. It's an understanding just in line with conventions. It's something that comes from the memories that come up. In the beginning, however, we start off with this faith and we bring up this faith. This is something which is there already within us. And we also have some knowledge as well. We know, for example, that all of these proliferations that come up in the mind and following those, chasing after those, that's something that's not good. And so that's what brings us to training these minds so that we can experience some degree of inner peace. Because if we don't train our minds, then it'll just always be this way. There will be ignorance and craving and clinging, which brings up proliferation. And that takes us from birth to death over and over again. That happens many times in the space of one life. And then this body dies, and then we go on to the next life. And we can't count how many times this has happened already, how many times we've been born and died. And if we don't see the Satya Dhamma, this true Dhamma, then the ignorance, craving, and clinging that's there within our minds will take them from birth to death countless times in the future. So then what do we do? what we need to practice. We need to train our minds and to really be firm and sincere in that. And cultivating this mindfulness and samadhi, whether standing, walking, sitting, lying down, try to have a lot of mindfulness there. You can keep the word Buddha or Dhamma or Sangha in your mind, reciting that constantly as well. And try not to look at the other people around you, but just stay there watching your own mind. Try to speak very little and be awakened through effort. And so may all of you set your hearts on this.
Please chant together. Kokaka. Mayam bante tisarane nasaha atasila niyachama tutiyampi mayam bante tisarane nasaha atasila niyachama Tatiyampi mayam bante tisaranena saha atasila niyachama.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa.
Buddhaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi.
Buddhaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi.
Dhammaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi.
Dhammaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi.
Sanghaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi.
Sanghaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi.
Dutiyampi Buddhaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi.
Dutiyampi Buddhaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi.
Dutiyampi Dhammaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi.
Dutiyampi Dhammaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi.
Dutiyampi Sanghaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi.
Dutiyampi Sanghaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi.
Tatiyampi Buddhaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi.
Tatiyampi Buddhaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi.
Tatiyampi Dhammaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi.
Tatiyampi Dhammaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi.
Tatiyampi Sanghaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi.
Tatiyampi Sanghaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi.
Tisarana kamanaṃ nittitaṃ.
Nama bante.
Pānāti pātā Veramani sikkhapattaṃ Samādhiyāmi.
Pānāti pātā Veramani sikkhapattaṃ samādhiyāmi.
Athīnāthānā Veramani sikkhapattaṃ Samādhiyāmi.
Adinādhāna Veramani sikkhapattaṃ samādhiyāmi.
Brahmacharya Veramani sikkhapattaṃ Samādhiyāmi.
อาบรามจาริยาเวรมณีสิกขาปดังสมาธิยามิ
มุสาวาทาเวรมณีสิกขาปะทังสมาธิยามิ
มุสาวาทาเวรมณีสิกขาปดังสมาธิยามิ
สุราเมรยะมัจจปมาทฐานาเวรมณีสิกขาปะทังสมาธิยามิ
สุราเมรยามัจจปมาทฐานาเวรมณีสิกขาปดังสมาธิยามิ
วิการโภชนาเวรมณีสิกขาปะทังสมาธิยามิ
อิคาลโภชนาเวรมณีสิกขาปดังสมาธิยามิ
นัจจคีตวาทิตวิสุกัตสนะมาราคันทวิไลปนาธารณมันดนะวิภูสนทานาเวรมณีสิกขาปะทังสมาธิยามิ
นาชากิตาวาดิตาวิสุกาทัสนามาลากันตาวิเลปนาดารณามันดนาวิปุสสนาธานาเวรมณีสิกขาปดังสมาธิยามิ
อุจจาสยนะมหาสยนาเวรมณีสิกขาปะทังสมาธิยามิ
อุจจาสยนามหาสยนาเวรมณีสิกขาปดังสมาธิยามิ
อิมานิอัฏฐสิกขาปทานิสีเลนะสุขาติยันติสีเลนะโภคสัมปทาสีเลนะนิพพุติยันติตัสมาสีลังวิโสทะเย
สาธุสาธุสาธุ Let's pay our respects with three bows together. Bow.